Season 1 of Lost begins with the passengers of Oceanic Flight 815 crash landing on a mysterious island during their journey from Sydney, Australia to Los Angeles, California. The survivors of the crash are forced to team up to survive, as if they can't find a way to live together, they would die alone. Throughout the series, flashbacks reveal the past history of each of the survivors. Jack Shephard is a spinal surgeon who married and then divorced a former patient. He was in Sydney to pick up the body of his recently deceased father, Christian Shephard, to bring it home for a funeral in America. Kate Austin is a fugitive wanted for murdering her abusive father and was being transported back to America by a U.S. Marshal to await trial. Charlie Pace is a heroin-addicted washed-up rock star known for his band Drive Shaft's one-hit wonder You All Everybody. Sayid Jarrah is a former torturer and interrogator for Iraq's Special Republican Guard. After abandoning his post, Sayid cut a deal with the CIA to infiltrate a terrorist cell in Australia in exchange for the location of the love of his life, Nadia. James Ford is a con man who takes on the name Sawyer after the con man who tricked his mother out of a large sum of money, causing his father to murder her and leave Sawyer an orphan. Sawyer was in Sydney to kill the original Sawyer for revenge, but was given bad intel and killed the wrong guy. Hugo Hurley Reyes won over $100 million in the lottery after playing numbers he heard from a fellow patient during his brief stint in a psychiatric hospital. After winning the money, Hurley's life became incredibly unlucky, leading Hurley to suspect that the winning numbers 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 42 are cursed. And so he followed a lead to Sydney to uncover the truth about the number's origins. Michael Dawson flew to Australia to pick up his young estranged son Walt, following the death of Walt's mother. Michael hadn't seen Walt since he was a baby, putting a strain on their relationship. Along for the trip back to America is Walt's dog Vincent. Sun and Jin Kwon are a married couple on the brink of separation. After falling in love and getting married, the lower-class Jin took a job working for Sun's powerful father. This job required Jin to do a lot of violent and criminal activities, hardening his personality and straining his relationship with Sun and leading to her having an affair. Sun learned English in secret to run away from Jin and move to America, but ultimately realized her true love for him and decided to try to reconcile their marriage. Claire Littleton is a young Australian woman on the verge of giving birth. She was traveling to America to give her unborn child up for adoption. Eventually, she discovers that her father is actually Christian Shephard, making her Jack's secret long-lost sister. Boone Carlisle and Shannon Rutherford are vapid and well-off step-siblings, who also have complicated romantic feelings for each other. Rose Nadler is a woman who desperately believes that her husband Bernard has somehow survived the plane crash, despite him being on the back of the plane that broke off and landed somewhere in the jungle. And then there's John Locke, who despite being the most adept survival expert on the island, is revealed to have been an oft-abused paraplegic before the crash. Locke became wheelchair-bound after his absent father Anthony Cooper returned to his life as an adult to manipulate his son into giving him a kidney. After Locke gave his father a kidney, Anthony disappeared once again to con more unsuspecting innocent people. When Locke confronted his father, he was pushed out of an 8th-story window and paralyzed from the waist down. As these survivors band together on the island, they must not only search for food and shelter, but must also contend with polar bears, who have no business being in a tropical location, and a mysterious black smoke monster that lurks in the jungle. Jack quickly takes charge of the group, although his pragmatism puts him at odds with John Locke, whose miraculous recovery of his legs lead to him believing that the island holds magical properties and a destiny for them all. Locke forms a friendship with the young Walt and takes the good-intentioned Boone under his wing to mentor him on how to survive. Locke also helps Charlie come down from his heroin withdrawals and beat his addiction. A newly sober Charlie then strikes up a romance with the pregnant Claire, who eventually gives birth to a son named Aaron with some help from Kate. Meanwhile, Jack develops a romance with Kate, whose status as a wanted fugitive is kept secret due to the marshal being killed in the crash. Kate and Jack's romance is complicated when Kate also takes a romantic interest in Sawyer. Sawyer constantly antagonizes the other survivors, putting himself above others and hoarding vital medicine and supplies for himself. Throughout the season, Sawyer's selfishness begins to wane and he develops genuine bonds with his fellow survivors. Sayid gets help from Shannon translating a mysterious French radio broadcast, and the two begin a romance. While attempting to use the plane's radio to send out a distress signal, Sayid discovers that a French woman named Danielle Rousseau is also living on the island. Rousseau claims that her ship crashed on the island 16 years prior after hearing a broadcast of the same cursed numbers that Hurley used to win the lottery. After the crash, all of the surviving crew went mad with a strange sickness, given to them by the island natives, forcing Rousseau to kill them all. Rousseau also claims to have had a baby daughter named Alex, who was taken from her by the natives, who she calls the Others. Sayid is skeptical of Rousseau's story, but remains on alert of these mysterious unseen natives. Rousseau's story is eventually revealed to be true, as a supposed crash survivor named Ethan Rom is discovered to have not actually been on the plane. Ethan kidnaps Claire, but the survivors manage to rescue her. Despite plans to capture Ethan and interrogate him about the others, a vengeful Charlie murders the mysterious native. Meanwhile, Locke and Boone discover a mysterious buried hatch in the middle of the jungle, which they attempt to open. The duo then discovers a small crashed plane, which falls from its perch while Boone investigates it, critically injuring him. Despite Jack's best attempts to save him, Boone dies, devastating everyone. Soon after, Rousseau arrives at the survivors' camp, warning them that the others were coming. As the survivors prepare for an attack, Rousseau kidnaps the baby Aaron. Charlie and Sayid pursue Rousseau and rescue Aaron, after which Rousseau explains that she heard that the others were looking for the boy, and that she hoped to trade Aaron for her own long-missing daughter Alex. Not wanting his son to stay on the island any longer, Michael begins leading a crew of survivors to build a raft. Upon the raft's completion, Michael, Walt, Sawyer, and Jin depart the island in the hopes of finding help to rescue the others. The four men are ecstatic when their raft is discovered by a fishing boat, but the boat's crew turn out to be the villainous others. And the boy they were looking for was not Aaron, but Walt. The others shoot Sawyer, take Walt, and burn the raft, leaving Michael and Jin to die. Back on the island, after learning that Boone died trying to open the mysterious hatch, Jack joins Locke's mission to open it. The group discovers an old washed-up slave ship known as the Black Rock, which contains several cases of dynamite. Although a pretentious survivor named Arzt is blown up while trying to carry the dynamite, the others successfully manage to bring the explosives to the hatch, which they use to blow it up. As the season comes to a close, Jack and Locke stare down into the dark hatch, unsure of what they will find inside. You know, I'm sure that the castaways in Lost would love it if someone delivered to them a great tasting and nutritious meal that was super easy to prepare and cook. Heck, I'm not even stranded on a deserted island and I would love that for myself. Luckily, that's where this video's sponsor Factor comes in. Factor's team of gourmet chefs create incredible dietitian-approved meals and deliver them fresh and never frozen straight to your doorstep. I love that Factor takes all of the guesswork out of grocery shopping and meal prep time. And I don't need to spend hours in the kitchen and use up all of my clean pots and pans just to make a good tasting meal. Factor delivers my meal straight to my door. I could pop one in the microwave or oven, and within 2 minutes I'm eating a delicious meal. Factor's menus are updated weekly with over 27 meals and 33 add-ons, like their variety of great tasting smoothies. They also offer keto, calorie smart, chef's choice, and vegan and veggie options. So no matter your diet, you're gonna be eating good. Personally, Factor has helped me easily keep to my dietary goals as I try to be more active and healthy. They're my go-to meal before any race or competition I participate in. And my wife loves that she can take a Factor meal to work for a fast and tasty lunch. So head to factor75.com or click the link below and use promo code RECAP50 for 50% off your first Factor box. That's factor75.com and promo code RECAP50 for 50% off your first box. Thanks again to Factor for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to the recap. In Season 2 of Lost, Jack, Kate, and Locke enter the hatch to discover a man named Desmond Hume living inside. Desmond explains that his sailboat crashed on the island 3 years prior, after which he was recruited by the mysterious Dharma Initiative to stay in the hatch and type in the cursed numbers into a computer every 108 minutes, or the entire world would end. Before his time on the island, Desmond was a good-for-nothing man dishonorably discharged from the military. Wanting to marry the love of his life, Penny, Desmond was constantly strong-armed and scared off by Penny's powerful and wealthy father, Charles Widmore. To earn Widmore's respect, Desmond attempted to win his sailing race, which ultimately resulted in Desmond crashing on the island. Now, with new survivors in the hatch to take up his post, Desmond flees the island on his secret sailboat. Jack and Locke then discover a Dharma video from the 1970s, where a one-armed man named Pierre Chang explains that the hatch was built to contain a dangerous electromagnetic anomaly on the island. Locke believes this story and commits himself to typing in the numbers, but Jack views the story as a ridiculous psychological experiment. Meanwhile, Michael, Jin, and a seriously injured Sawyer wash back up on the opposite side of the island, where they are found by the surviving members of Oceanic 815's tail section. Survivors from the group include Ana Lucia Cortez, a former cop who takes charge, Libby Smith, a wealthy benefactor who funded Desmond's sailing expedition and was a patient in the same mental institution as Hurley, Mr. Echo, a former drug warlord turned priest that has a similar faith in the island's mysticism as Locke, and Bernard Nadler, the missing husband that Rose so assuredly believed was alive. As the group journeys across the island to reunite with the other survivors and save the ailing Sawyer's life, the tail section survivors explain their own history on the island so far. They also were infiltrated by a member of the others, who Ana Lucia killed, and many of their other fellow survivors were either killed or abducted. They had also discovered their own Dharma station during their journey. As the group finally makes it to the other side of the island, Ana Lucia shoots and kills Shannon, thinking she was an other. Jack then saves Sawyer's life, Rose and Bernard are reunited, and Ana Lucia is ostracized from the group for killing Shannon. Mr. Echo joins Locke's mission to continue inputting the numbers, and together the two find more Dharma instructional films hidden within the hatch, one of which warns them to not use the station's computer to communicate with the outside world, as it could lead to another incident. Despite this, Michael uses the computer in secret to communicate with someone who claims to be Walt. After learning of Walt's supposed location on the island, Michael heads off into the jungle in search of his son. Elsewhere on the island, Mr. Echo discovers that the plane that killed Boone was actually his own plane used for smuggling heroin out of Nigeria. The plane contained the body of his good-natured priest brother, killed due to Echo's reckless actions. This death was what caused Echo to turn away from his life of violence toward one of faith. Also in the plane is Echo's shipment of heroin, which Charlie takes and considers using, straining his relationship with Claire. Sun also discovers that she is pregnant, which concerns her due to Jin having previously discovered he is infertile. Sun and Jin's marriage is stronger than ever, but possibly being pregnant with another man's baby threatens to ruin their relationship. Rose and Bernard also decide that no matter what happens with the other survivors, they intend to stay on the island, as Rose believes it has cured her terminal cancer. Russo then returns to the survivors' camp to reveal she has captured a man named Henry Gale. Henry claims to have crashed on the island in a hot air balloon 4 months prior, but Sayid suspects he is actually an other and unsuccessfully tortures him for answers. Despite Sayid's warnings, Jack intervenes on Henry's torture and instead orders the stranger to be kept a prisoner until they can determine what to do with him. While a prisoner in the hatch, Henry and Locke form a friendship, with Henry goading Locke into realizing that Jack always gets his way, despite Locke being the better suited leader. Eventually, Sayid discovers the grave of the real Henry Gale, proving the group's prisoner is actually one of the others. Although Jack and Kate plan to trade Henry to the others in exchange for Walt, Michael returns from his journey, explaining that the others were a small and virtually defenseless group that could be easily defeated. Secretly, he heads into the hatch and murders its current inhabitants, Ana Lucia and Libby, releases Henry, then shoots himself in the arm. Michael lies to the other survivors that Henry escaped and killed Ana Lucia and Libby, then leads Jack, Sawyer, Kate, and Hurley on a mission to rescue Walt. Instead, the group are led into a trap where Henry Gale reveals himself to be the leader of the others named Benjamin Linus. In exchange for bringing Jack, Kate, Sawyer, and Hurley, Ben allows Michael and Walt to leave the island on a boat. Ben then lets Hurley flee to warn the other survivors to stay away from the others, or else Jack, Kate, and Sawyer would suffer the consequences. Meanwhile, after discovering that Henry Gale was a liar, there, Locke feels disillusioned with his faith in the island's mystical powers and begins to doubt the importance of entering the numbers. Desmond returns to the island, explaining to Locke that he had inadvertently caused Oceanic 815's crash after typing in the numbers too late. Despite this, Locke is resolved to let the 108-minute timer hit 0 to prove its meaninglessness. As the timer hits 0, the hatch experiences a system failure. Desmond then turns a secret failsafe key, causing a painful shrill sound and a bright white light to envelop the entire island, averting a complete disaster. In Season 3 of Lost, Locke, Echo, and Desmond are revealed to have survived the hatch implosion, though all are changed by the experience. Echo is called into the jungle by a hallucination of his dead brother, where he is then killed by the smoke monster. Desmond begins experiencing visions of the future, most notably of the inevitable death of Charlie Pace, who Desmond is constantly having to save. And John Locke is once again a man of faith, believing fully that he and everyone else on the island were brought there for some higher purpose. And he is now more resolved than ever to bring that destiny to fruition. Meanwhile, Jack, Kate, and Sawyer are brought by the others to a Dharma research station known as the Hydra. Sawyer and Kate are kept outside in cages and forced into manual labor, growing closer in the process. Inside the Hydra, Jack learns that Ben is dying from a tumor on his spine. Ben believes the island brought Jack to the island to save his life, and if Jack cooperates, Ben would spare Kate and Sawyer's lives, while also allowing Jack to leave the island on a submarine. One of Ben's closest allies is Juliet, who develops romantic feelings for Jack and confesses her true hatred for Ben. Juliet was a fertility doctor hired and brought to the island under false pretenses, as every woman who conceived a child on the island died from a mysterious illness. Juliet has been unable to discover the cause of these deaths, and has been forced by Ben to stay on the island ever since. Despite Juliet urging Jack to kill Ben during the spinal surgery and stage it as an accident, Jack successfully completes the surgery to earn his and Juliet's place on the departing submarine, as well as the release of Kate and Sawyer. As Kate and Sawyer flee the others' camp, they are aided by Russo's daughter Alex, who has been raised by Ben since being stolen as a baby. They also free Alex's boyfriend Carl, who Ben has imprisoned and attempted to brainwash in an attempt to prevent any chance that he impregnates Alex, which would jeopardize her life. When Kate and Sawyer return to their beach home and reunite with the other survivors, the group stage a rescue mission for Jack, unaware of the deal he had already made with Ben to leave the island. Kate, Locke, and Sayid are joined by Russo in their mission, and eventually they discover the others' real home, a series of barracks resembling quaint 1950s style houses. Expecting to find Jack as a hostage, Kate is shocked to see that Jack has fully ingratiated himself with the enemy. Kate believes that Jack has been brainwashed, but he reveals his deal to leave the island with Juliet. Unfortunately for them, Locke has other plans. Believing it was destiny for them all to remain on the island, Locke blows up the submarine. He is then captured by Ben and another named Richard Alpert. Ben is happy that Locke blew up the submarine and informs him that his connection to the island makes him extremely important. And so Locke joins the others, who all leave their barrack homes, abandoning Kate, Sayid, Jack, and Juliet. The four then head back to the survivors' beach camp, where despite Jack's good word, everyone remains extremely suspicious of Juliet. But don't think that the other survivors weren't up to much during Jack, Kate, and Sayid's absence. Hurley found some old beer and a Dharma van that he fixes up with Charlie, Sawyer, and Jin, and fellow plane crash survivors Nikki and Paolo are revealed to have previously conned a wealthy executive out of diamonds worth millions of dollars. Fighting over the diamonds, the duo accidentally poisoned each other with spider venom that causes complete paralysis. When the other survivors found the bodies of Nikki and Paolo, they assumed they were dead, and thus buried them alive alongside the diamonds. Despite the survivors' lack of trust in Juliet, Sun bonds with the doctor. Juliet takes the pregnant Sun to a hidden Dharma station to run tests on her unborn child. Juliet determines that Sun conceived the baby on the island, but warns her that this means certain death. Despite this news, Sun is ecstatic to learn that this means Jin is her baby's father. Meanwhile, Locke returns from his time with the others to speak with Sawyer. He leads Sawyer to the Black Rock, where the others have brought Locke's villainous father Anthony Cooper to the island. Sawyer learns that Anthony Cooper is also the original Sawyer that conned his mother, leading to his parents' death. And so Sawyer kills Cooper, finally enacting his long-awaited revenge. Locke then parts ways with Sawyer once again, but leaves him with the warning that Juliet is working as a spy for Ben, and that the others would be raiding the survivors' beach in 3 days. When Sawyer reveals this news to the camp, Jack explains that he has been working with Juliet to get information out of Ben. Meanwhile, Locke is taken by Ben to meet the mysterious leader of the others, Jacob. Locke is unable to see Jacob but can hear him. Ben, who hasn't been able to communicate with Jacob for a very long time, becomes jealous that Locke has now seemingly been deemed more special. And so Ben shoots Locke and leaves him for dead. It's then revealed that Ben first came to the island as a child in the 1970s, when his father took a job working for the Dharma Initiative, who wanted to study the island and its mysterious properties. The young Ben grew to resent Dharma and became an ally of the island's native group of hostiles, led by an unaging Richard Alpert. And so Ben helped the hostiles murder all of the Dharma members, including his own father, to fully take over the island. Meanwhile, Desmond discovers a woman in the jungle named Naomi, who parachuted onto the island. Naomi explains that she is part of a team hired by Penny to find and rescue Desmond, and that a freighter ship 80 miles off the shore could rescue them all. Naomi is also surprised to find the survivors of Oceanic Flight 815, as she explains that the plane wreckage and the bodies of all of its passengers were discovered in the ocean off the coast of Bali. Everything comes to a head in the season finale, where the survivors formulate a plan to fight off the others and escape the island on Penny's freighter. To fight the others, Sayid, Jin, and Bernard stay at the beach in order to set off dynamite to kill the unsuspecting other attackers. Although they are at first outnumbered by the other attackers, Sawyer, Juliet, and a van driving Hurley arrive to help save their friends and kill the others. Meanwhile, Jack and Russo lead the rest of the survivors, including Naomi, on a journey to a Dharma station to send a message to the freighter. But first, Desmond and Charlie would need to travel to a Dharma station of their own, named the Looking Glass, which the others use to block all transmission to and from the island. The Looking Glass is located underwater, and Desmond warns that he had a vision that Charlie successfully reaches the station to unblock transmissions, but dies in the process. Knowing this mission would lead to certain death, Charlie remains resolved to see it through, as it would mean Claire and Aaron would be rescued. Charlie and Desmond both make the long swim to the underwater station, where Charlie successfully turns off the jammer. He is then contacted by Penny, who is completely unaware of the freighter. Before Charlie has a chance to react, a villainous other named Mikhail arrives, blowing himself up and causing the station to flood with water. Charlie locks himself in the communications room to contain the flooding, but begins to drown. As Desmond tries to save his friend, Charlie uses his dying moments to warn Desmond that Naomi is a liar and that the freighter is not Penny's boat. With the jammer turned off, Jack prepares to radio Naomi's boat. Ben arrives to warn him that Naomi is a liar, but Jack refuses to listen. Just as Naomi makes contact with the freighter, Locke arrives and murders her, agreeing with Ben that contact with the freighter would be disastrous for them all. Despite this, Jack makes contact with the boat, who agree to send help to the island. Throughout the series, flashbacks have revealed backstory of the various survivors before crash landing on the island, but the season 3 finale offers a twist on the format, where what at first seemed to be a flashback is actually revealed to be a flash forward. Jack is a depressed, drug-addicted, and alcoholic doctor who regrets leaving the island. In the final moments of season 3, an emotional Jack meets with Kate and tells her that they have to go back. In season 4 of Lost, flash forwards to an unknown time in the future reveal that Jack and Kate weren't the only survivors to somehow leave the island. Dubbed the Oceanic Six, Jack and Kate are joined by Hurley, Sayid, Sun, and baby Aaron. Jack and Kate continue their romantic relationship, with Kate raising Aaron as her own son, and Jack slipping into drug addiction due to his guilt over the events that transpired on the island, and his desire to return to make things right. Sun is grieving the death of Jin, though she does give birth to their daughter Ji-Yun. Hurley places himself back into his former mental hospital, also desiring to return to the island. Sayid, following the death of his true love Nadia, is now working as an assassin for Benjamin Benjamin Linus, who has his own secret means of leaving the island. But before we get to all of that, let's get back to the island in the present. Desmond returns from the Looking Glass station to warn the other survivors that the freighter crew has lied about working for Penny. Locke believes these claims and leads a team of survivors to the old Dharma barracks in an effort to evade the incoming danger. Those joining Locke's side include Hurley, Sawyer, Claire, Aaron, Russo, Alex, Carl, and Ben. A science team from the freighter arrives on the island via helicopter. That team includes Daniel Faraday, a socially awkward physicist, Miles Strom, a medium who can communicate with the dead, even using his powers to dig up Nikki and Paolo's diamonds, Charlotte Lewis, an anthropologist and the object of Faraday's desires, and Frank Lapidus, the helicopter's pilot who had originally been scheduled to fly Oceanic Flight 815. Upon meeting Jack, Miles informs him that the team's priority is actually to find and capture Benjamin Linus. Meanwhile, Sayid convinces Frank to fly him and Desmond back to the freighter. During the flight, Desmond's mind becomes displaced in time, sending his consciousness randomly back and forth between 1996 and the present day in 2004. This same time sickness has affected many of the freighter's crew who have attempted to journey to the island, and they all have eventually died. Communicating with Faraday via radio, Desmond is instructed to visit the 1996 version of Faraday for assistance. This past version of Faraday informs Desmond that he needs to find a constant, someone or something important that exists in both 1996 and 2004 that can anchor him in the present. And so 1996 Desmond, who has broken up with Penny, visits her and begs her to call him on the freighter in 2004. And due to her unending love for him, 8 years later, Penny calls Desmond, curing his time sickness. The two lovers reaffirm their undying devotion for each other, and Penny promises to find and rescue Desmond. In Locke's camp, the survivors begin to question their new leader's motives and mental state. Locke also allows Ben to live freely amongst the others, and Ben confirms to Locke that the freighter was sent by Charles Widmore to wage a war for control of the island. Ben also reveals that he has a spy aboard the freighter, Michael Dawson. After leaving the island, Michael became estranged from his son Walt and is racked with guilt over having murdered Ana Lucia and Libby. Michael was then recruited by Ben to infiltrate the freighter and kill the villainous attackers in an attempt to save the island survivors and atone for his actions. Knowing that the freighter crew would come for him, Ben urges his daughter Alex to flee with Russo and Carl to a temple. On the way, the group is attacked by a group of freighter mercenaries led by Martin Keamy. The mercenaries kill Russo and Carl, then take Alex hostage. The mercenaries then attack the barracks, opening fire on the survivors and demanding that Ben surrender. When Ben refuses, Keamy murders Alex in cold blood. A heartbroken Ben then calls the smoke monster, the island security system, to attack the mercenaries. The survivors flee the barracks, with Locke, Ben, and Hurley seeking out the mysterious island leader Jacob for answers, while Sawyer, Claire, and Aaron head off to reunite with the other survivors. Along the way, Claire mysteriously vanishes in the jungle, leaving Sawyer to care for her infant son. Keamy survives his run-in with the smoke monster and returns to the freighter to regroup with his surviving mercenaries. Tired of dealing with the more well-meaning members of the freighter crew, Keamy stages a mutiny, killing the ship's captain and forcing Lapidus to fly the mercenaries back to the island to kill its inhabitants. Fearing for his friends' lives, Sayid steals a boat and returns to the island to rescue the other survivors. Back on the island, Locke, Ben, and Hurley find Jacob's cabin, which is currently occupied by the ghost of Christian Shephard and his daughter, Claire. Speaking on behalf of Jacob, Christian warns that the freighter's mercenaries would soon arrive to slaughter them all, and to save the island must be moved. As Ben leads Locke and Hurley to Dharma's Orchid Station to move the island, they are attacked by Keamy's team and Ben is captured. Sayid arrives on the island and Faraday helps begin the process of ferrying the survivors to the freighter. Unfortunately, when Sun, Jin, and Aaron reach the freighter, they discover that Keamy has planted a massive amount of explosives on board. Upon discovering the bomb, Michael and Desmond begin devising a plan to defuse it. Back on the island, not wanting to leave Hurley behind, Jack, Sawyer, Kate, and Sayid rush to retrieve him from Locke and Ben. Finding Ben captured, they fight back against the mercenaries and save the former antagonist. As thanks for rescuing their leader, Richard and the others allow Frank to fly Jack, Kate, Sayid, Sawyer, and Hurley off the island. Unfortunately, the helicopter has a fuel leak and wouldn't be able to make it to safety. In order to lighten the load and ensure his friends could make it back to the freighter, Sawyer jumps out of the helicopter and into the ocean. Frank is then able to successfully reach the freighter to refuel and fix the leak. At the Orchid Station, Ben and Locke are confronted by Kimi, who explains that he had connected the C4 on the freighter to a heartbeat monitor, meaning that if Kimi dies, the freighter explodes. Despite this threat, Ben murders Kimi to avenge his daughter Alex. Ben then explains that Locke is now to lead the others and protect the island, while Ben goes inside the Orchid to move the island, which would force him to leave and never return. On the freighter, Desmond, Sun, and Aaron make it on board the helicopter with the others to fly it away as the C4 detonates, killing Jin and Michael. With nothing but the vast ocean around them, Frank decides to fly back to the island, but that just so happens to be the moment where Ben successfully moves the island, causing it to vanish right before the helicopter crew's eyes. Eventually, the helicopter runs out of fuel and the survivors are forced to evacuate and drift in a life raft. Eventually, the survivors are rescued by Penny, who upheld her promise to find her missing love. Desmond and Penny have an emotional reunion, while Jack convinces the other survivors to lie about their experiences on the island to protect those they were forced to leave behind. And that brings us back to the Oceanic 6. Jack meets Ben at a funeral home containing the dead body of a mysterious man named Jeremy Bentham. Ben explains that if Jack wants to go back to the island, everyone would need to return, including the body of Jeremy Bentham, who is revealed to be a deceased John Locke. In Season 5 of Lost, the island has become unstuck in time due to Ben's efforts to relocate it. The remaining survivors, including Locke, Sawyer, Juliet, Faraday, Charlotte, and Miles, begin to jump uncontrollably to various points in time, including the day Mr. Echo's drug plane crashed on the island, and the day Claire gave birth to Aaron. In the 1990s, Faraday meets a confused past version of Desmond and tells him to search for his mother at Oxford University should he ever leave the island. In the 1950s, Sawyer and Juliet meet a young Charles Widmore as a member of the others, while Faraday helps another named Ellie bury and defuse a dangerous hydrogen bomb that the American government had test dropped on the island. During a jump to the 1980s, Danielle Rousseau's team of French researchers crash on the island and encounter Jin, who survived the freighter explosion and has been alone and very confused about these jumps through time. Eventually, Jin manages to reunite with his friends. The survivors then begin to develop the time sickness that would kill them all if they couldn't find a way to stop the time jumps. At various points in time, Locke meets with the ageless Richard Alpert, immune to the time jumps, who tells Locke that the only way to fix the island is to bring back everyone who left. Richard also warns Locke that the only way to do that is to die. Locke then leads the group to the Orchid Station, which will allow him to leave the island and bring back the others. Charlotte succumbs to her sickness and dies in Faraday's arms, revealing before her death that she grew up on the island as a member of the Dharma Initiative, and now realizes that a strange man in the 1970s who warned her to never return was in fact a time-traveling Daniel Faraday. As Locke enters the Orchid, Jin gives him his wedding ring, asking Locke to use it as proof of his death so that Sun or their baby wouldn't want to return to the island. Locke then turns the wheel, taking him off the island but stopping the time jumps. Off the island, Locke meets Charles Widmore, who explains that he was once the leader of the others before being usurped and cast out by Ben. Widmore has spent decades trying to return to the island and wants the Oceanic 6 on his side for the upcoming war against Ben. Widmore planted the fake Oceanic 815 in the ocean to stop the search for the plane wreckage and the potential discovery of the island. Locke then visits the Oceanic 6, begging them to return. After they all turn him down, Locke is visited by Ben. Wanting to take back control of the others upon his return, Ben murders the broken and defeated Locke, and steals his plan to unite the Oceanic Six and return to the island. Locke's death then becomes the catalyst for Jack's desire to return to the island. Ben gives Jin's wedding ring to Sun, telling her that her husband was still alive. Ben also orchestrates a custody battle for Aaron, forcing Kate to take a maternity test to prove that Aaron wasn't her actual son. Because of these duplicitous actions, Sun happily rejoins the cause, and Kate gives Aaron to Claire's mother in order to return to the island. Hurley is convinced to return to the island after being visited by the island's mysterious leader Jacob. And finally, Sayid is captured by a mysterious bounty hunter named Alana. And so, willingly or forcefully, all of the castaways are prepared to return to the island. As prompted by Daniel Faraday a decade prior, Desmond seeks out Faraday's mother, Eloise Hawking, who informs the Oceanic Six that she has figured out a way to locate the island. And so they must all board the upcoming Jarrah Airways Flight 316 to once again crash land on the island. Desmond decides to stay behind with his wife Penny and their new son Charlie. Aboard the plane, Jack discovers that the pilot is none other than Frank Lapidus. As Jarrah Flight 316 crashes, the survivors are randomly thrown into two separate periods. Ben, Sun, Frank, the bounty hunter Alana, and the other passengers remain in the present, while Jack, Kate, Hurley, and Sayid are transported back to 1977. They soon discover that their former friends have spent the last 3 years living amongst the Dharma Initiative. Sawyer, now going by the name Jim LaFleur, has become Dharma's trusted and well-respected head of security. He has developed a romance with Juliet, who now works as a mechanic. Daniel Faraday has left the group on a Dharma research mission, while Jin and Miles work under Sawyer as security officers. Although Jin has yet to give up hope on his friends rescuing him, Sawyer has fully ingratiated himself into the Dharma culture, enjoying his leadership role and the simple domestic life he has built with Juliet. Sawyer's new life is thrown into disarray when Jack, Kate, and Hurley are found in the jungle. Sawyer helps them join the Dharma Initiative, but Jack butts heads with his former rival on leading the group. Meanwhile, Sayid is captured by Dharma, mistaking him for a hostile. Sayid then meets the child version of Ben, who hates his alcoholic father and wishes to join the others. Thinking Sayid is an other, Ben helps him escape from the Dharma prison. Sayid, hating Ben and thinking his adolescent death could prevent his many nefarious future acts, shoots the young, innocent Ben. When Jack refuses to save the young boy's life, Kate and Sawyer take him to Richard Alpert and the others, who agree to save his life but warn that he will never be the same. And so by attempting to kill Ben, Sayid and Jack merely created the villainous man he would one day become. Back in 2007, the other passengers of Jarrah Flight 316 are shocked to discover that John Locke has somehow come back to life. Meanwhile, Sun and Frank are confused by the revelation that the rest of the survivors, including Jin, are somehow trapped in the 1970s. The resurrected Locke takes back control of the others and announces his intent to seek out Jacob for answers. Upon arriving at Jacob's temple home, Locke secretly informs Ben that Jacob needs to die, and Ben should be the one to kill him. As the duo entered the temple, Alana, revealed to be an acolyte of Jacob, arrives to confront Richard, revealing that the dead body of John Locke is still inside his coffin, meaning whoever is about to confront Jacob is not the real John Locke. Inside the temple, Locke and Ben meet Jacob, who immediately recognizes Locke to in fact be the mysterious man in black, Jacob's mysterious adversary who has been trapped on the island for centuries, searching for a way to kill Jacob to leave the island. Despite Jacob's warnings, a spiteful Ben goes through with the plan and murders the island's leader. Back in the 1970s, Daniel Faraday returns to the island with an idea to change the future. By detonating the hydrogen bomb he helped bury in the 1950s during the incident, Faraday and his fellow survivors could prevent the construction of the Swan Station. Without the Swan Station, there would be no numbers to input by Desmond, no crash of Oceanic Flight 815, and no way for Charles Widmore to rediscover the island. When Faraday visits the others to retrieve the bomb, he is mistakenly shot by an other that just so happens to be the younger version of his mother, Eloise. Following Faraday's death, Jack takes up his cause, believing that detonating the bomb was the reason he was destined to return to the island. Kate then deems Jack to be just as crazy as Locke. As Jack and Sayid meet with Richard and the others to secure the bomb, the other survivors attempt to persuade the Dharma Initiative into evacuating the island. Miles meets his father, Dr. Pierre Chang, and convinces him that he was in fact his son from the future. Chang helps convince the rest of the Dharma leadership to evacuate the island on a submarine. Sawyer, Juliet, and Kate are loaded into the sub, finally ready to leave the island for good. Despite Sawyer's desire to flee with Juliet and continue their life in peace, Kate convinces them to leave the sub and stop Jack's plan. Jack and Sayid retrieve the bomb's core, which just so happens to be buried underneath the Dharma barracks. As the duo flee with the core, Ben's father Roger recognizes Sayid as his son's attacker and shoots him. Jack and the injured Sayid are then picked up by Hurley, Jin, and Miles and taken to the under construction Swan Station. Sawyer, Juliet, and Kate arrive to thwart the plan, but ultimately Juliet relents, knowing her life with Sawyer wasn't meant to be. And so, everyone bands together to detonate the bomb. Inside the Swan Station, Dharma's head of research Radzinski is forcing Pierre Chang to drill into the island's unstable supposed energy source. As Dharma security forces arrive and engage in a gunfight with the survivors, Jack manages to reach the drill site and drop the bomb inside. The bomb fails to detonate, but the energy pocket is breached, activating a powerful magnetic field. Chang's arm is crushed, and Juliet is dragged toward the deep chasm. Sawyer desperately tries to save his love, but to no avail, and Juliet plummets to certain death. At the bottom, a barely alive Juliet begins slamming a rock into the bomb, until finally it explodes, leaving the fate of not just the survivors but the island itself unknown. In Season 6 of Lost, two very different outcomes of the hydrogen bomb's detonation are revealed. In what are known as Flash Sideways, Oceanic Flight 815 successfully lands in Los Angeles, with the lives of its passengers now radically different. Jack Shephard now has a son, David, who he co-parents with his ex-wife, Juliet. Kate is still a wanted fugitive, though while on the run, she befriends Claire and convinces her to not give the unborn Aaron up for adoption. Kate also has a run-in with Sawyer, who is now a police officer whose partner is Miles. Hurley now considers himself the luckiest man in the world. Charlie is still a heroin-addicted rock star. Sayid now believes himself undeserving of Nadia, leading her to marry his brother Omer. Sun and Jin aren't married, though they are in a relationship they keep secret so as to avoid the wrath of Sun's violent father. Desmond is now an 815 passenger, and although he has never met Penny, he does have an excellent relationship with her father, Charles Widmore, who now serves as Desmond's friendly boss and mentor. And then there's John Locke, who is still wheelchair bound but no longer burdened by his relationship with his father. Locke eventually takes a job working as a substitute teacher, where he befriends fellow teacher Benjamin Linus. Locke lends Ben his support in a bid to become the school's principal, as he can see that the kind-hearted Ben has excellent leadership potential. Outside of these flash sideways, we return to the island, where Jack's plan to destroy the island has failed. The only small victory is that he and his fellow survivors have been transported from the 1970s to the present day. Juliet succumbs to her wounds, leaving Sawyer heartbroken and blaming Jack for his love's death. The survivors are then instructed by the ghost of Jacob to rush a mortally wounded Sayid to a jungle temple belonging to the others. There, the temple's leader Dogan is shocked to learn of Jacob's death. Although Sayid is magically killed and resurrected by the temple's spring water, Dogan fears that Sayid has become infected with a darkness, and therefore must be killed again. Dogan also warns that this darkness has already infected another Oceanic 815 survivor, the long-missing Claire. Meanwhile, the villainous Man in Black begins trying to recruit members to his side in his ultimate quest to finally escape the island and spread his darkness to the rest of the world. Jacob and the Man in Black were brothers who were born on the island centuries prior, raised by a fanatical mother who served as the island's protector. Jacob grew up to succeed as the island's faithful protector, with his mission being to never let the mysterious golden light at the heart of the island to go out. Conversely, the man in black was always curious of the outside world, and resented his mother for never letting him leave. When strangers came to the island and offered to let the man in black join their escape mission, the mother slaughtered them all. In an act of vengeance, the man in black killed his mother. In return, Jacob pushed his brother into the island's heart, killing his human body, transforming him into the smoke monster, and damning him to never leave the island. Richard is revealed to have crash landed on the island as a slave aboard the Black Rock. After being saved and granted immortality by Jacob, Richard has been a loyal follower ever since. And so, though feeling purposeless after Jacob's death, he rebukes the Man in Black's offer to join him. The Man in Black also tries to recruit the grieving and vengeful Sawyer, explaining that Jacob had intervened in the lives of all of the Oceanic 815 survivors to lead them to the island in the hopes that one of them would be a candidate who could step up to replace him as leader and protector of the island. The Man in Black states that Jacob's plan was pointless and has led to so much heartache. Sawyer agrees and joins the Man in Black's side. Also joining the Man in Black's team are the infected Sayid and Claire. Claire has gone mad and violent while living on her own and searching for Aaron for the past 3 years. The Man in Black sends Sayid back inside the temple, where he kills Dogen, breaking the temple's barrier and allowing the Man in Black to enter and slaughter everyone. While Kate and Jin are captured at the temple, the other survivors manage to avoid the temple attack and reunite on the beach. The group are still reeling from the death of Jacob, with Ben particularly remorseful over his own involvement in both Jacob and Locke's deaths. Jack also convinces Richard that even though Jacob is dead, they still had a purpose to fulfill by defeating the Man in Black and saving the island. A newly resolved Richard becomes determined to destroy the salvaged Jarrah plane so that the Man in Black can't use it to escape the island, while Jack remains convinced they can defeat the Man in Black and use the plane to escape the island once and for all. The Man in Black then sends Sawyer on a mission to spy on the Jarrah 316 survivors, but he is instead captured by Charles Widmore along the way. Widmore and his team of mercenaries have arrived via a submarine to wage war for control of the island. Sawyer makes a deal with Widmore to lure the Man in Black into a trap, in exchange for passage on the submarine off the island. When Sawyer reunites with the Man in Black's group, Sawyer confesses to the captured Kate that his real plan is to pit the Man in Black and Widmore against each other, giving himself and his friends a chance to steal the submarine for themselves and escape. As part of Widmore's master plan, he has kidnapped Desmond and brought him back to the island, subjecting him to large amounts of electromagnetic energy that are lethal to every other human. During these tests, Desmond has visions of the Flash Sideways timeline. Working for Charles Widmore, Desmond is tasked with delivering drug addict rock star Charlie Pace to a benefit concert to play alongside Widmore's pianist son Daniel. Charlie explains to Desmond that after a near-death experience, he saw visions of his time on the island and of his true love, Claire. Charlie helps Desmond remember his own time on the island and of his own true love, Penny. And so Desmond makes it his mission to round up the Oceanic 815 survivors and help them remember the island timeline. Back in the island timeline, Richard is continuing with his plan to destroy the plane, and Alana is accidentally killed by unstable dynamite. Hurley begins communicating with the island and becomes resolved to stop Richard, defeat the Man in Black, and escape the island. Trusting Hurley's connection to the island and his leadership skills, Jack agrees to support his friend by any means necessary. Eventually, all of the survivors come together, leading to the years in the making reunion of Sun and Jin. As Widmore's forces and the Man in Black go to war, Sawyer enacts his plan to steal the submarine and leave the island. During the chaos, Sawyer, Kate, Jack, Hurley, Sun, Jin, Sayid, and Frank all manage to board the submarine and depart the island, forced to leave behind their other allies. As the submarine descends into the ocean, Jack discovers that the Man in Black has placed time explosives in his bag. If all of Jacob's candidates died, the Man in Black would be allowed to leave the island. Fighting back against the darkness that has infected him, Sayid takes the explosives and runs to the other side of the submarine, sacrificing himself to save his friends. The explosion causes the submarine to flood with water, and when Sun becomes trapped inside, Jin decides to stay by his wife's side, and the two lovers die hand in hand. The survivors of the explosion are then brought to the ghost of Jacob, who manifests for a final time to ask them to protect the heart of the island. Jack steps up to be the new Jacob and is made the island's new immortal leader, with Jacob finally passing on in peace. Meanwhile, the Man in Black has his final confrontation with Widmore, threatening Penny's life if he didn't reveal the secret to destroy the island. As Widmore explains that Desmond is the key, Ben murders Widmore as revenge for Alex's death. The Man in Black then captures Desmond, and the newly christened leader Jack accompanies them to the heart of the island. While the Man in Black believes Desmond can destroy the island, Jack has faith that Desmond was brought here by Jacob for a reason, and that reason could lead to the ultimate defeat of the Man in Black. Inside the island's heart, Desmond removes a giant stone that acts as a cork to the island's energy. As the island verges on destruction, the Man in Black is finally released from his binds and allowed to leave. This act also makes him and Jack mortal once again, leading to the two men engaging in a fight to the death. Kate arrives to help Jack kill the Man in Black once and for all, though Jack is mortally wounded in the fight. As Kate joins the other survivors in racing to the Ajira plane in order for Frank to fly them to safety, Jack returns to the island's heart, determined to replace the cork and save the island. Along the way, he encounters Hurley, naming him the worthy successor as island protector. Ben decides to stay by Hurley's side and is finally content to act in service of the greater good. Inside the heart, Jack helps Desmond escape before replacing the cork and saving the island. As the Ajira flight departs the island once and for all, Jack collapses and succumbs to his injuries, finally at peace. In the flash sideways, Desmond successfully helps his fellow survivors remember their time on the island, with the deep and long-lasting bonds being the triggers to regain their memories. Kate once again helps Claire deliver baby Aaron, sparking her memories of the same delivery on the island. Sawyer runs into Juliet, and the ill-fated lovers share a romantic embrace. Spinal surgeon Jack performs a surgery on John Locke that not only gives him the ability to walk again, but also restores his memories. In the end, Jack is the only survivor to resist the memory of his time on the island. As all of the survivors gather at a church for the funeral of Christian Shephard, Jack's father appears to him and explains that the flash sideways was actually a purgatory-like place for all of the survivors to find each other and make peace before moving on to the afterlife. Whether on the island or decades in the future after a long and fulfilling life, each of the survivors would one day die, but it was here in this place that they could be together one last time. Ben deems himself unworthy of this peace, and remains outside of the church to further atone for his past villainous actions. Inside the church, Jack finally accepts his death and regains his memories, emotionally reuniting with all of his past friends and family as they move on together into the next life.